Good morning, everyone. My name is Michael Sexton. I am an area team leader at the Greater Cambridgeshire Planning Service. Before we commence, I need to advise everyone that Chair and Vice Chair have sent their apologies for this meeting, and therefore I need to call for nominations to the position of Chair and Vice Chair, please. Councillor Williams.
I nominate Councillor Harvey as Chair.
Sorry. Yeah.
Thank you.
I would like to nominate Councillor Heather Williams as Vice Chair.
Thank you. So if you vote.
Right. Good morning, members, officers, and any members of the public who are viewing the live stream. Welcome to this additional meeting of South Cambridgeshire District Council Planning Committee. My name is Councillor Jeff Harvey, and I'm the member for Borcham, so I'll be chairing this meeting today. And my vice chair will be Councillor Heather Williams. Can I ask firstly the officers and then members, perhaps starting with Phoebe, to introduce themselves?
Thank you. My name is Phoebe Carter. I'm the Senior Planning Officer who is presenting the item today. Thank you.
Hello again. Michael Sexton, Area Team Leader.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Vanessa Blaine. I'm the Legal Advisor for the committee.
I'm Simon Hill. I'm the Democratic Services Officer.
Okay, and other members of the committee, starting with Councillor Helen Leeming, perhaps.
Good morning. I'm Councillor Helen Leeming. I'm one of the 3 ward members for Camborne. Thank you.
Morning, Chair. Morning, everyone. Timmy Hawkins, Caldecott Ward.
Councillor Heather Williams. I represent the Mordens ward.
Thank you. Those in the chamber are reminded that the meeting is being live streamed. By your presence here in the chamber and via video conference, you're deemed to have consented to being filmed and to the use of images and sound recordings for a webcast and archived recording. May I ask those who are joining us remotely to ensure that their camera and microphone remain off unless they are addressing the committee. So just to clarify, the process for the planning committee will be that the case officer will give a brief introduction to the report. The committee may then ask questions of clarification of the case officer. Registered public speakers will then be invited to speak for an allotted 3 minutes. There are 3 minutes allotted for those speaking in support and 3 minutes for those against. Public speakers are unable to join with the councillor debate, but members may ask questions or clarification. The committee will then debate the item or the application. At the end of the debate and conclusion of any questions of clarification, provided there's no alternative proposal, the officer recommendation will be read out, and I'll request a proposer and a seconder for the recommendation. And I will then ask members to vote on the officer recommendation or any alternative proposal, and the vote of each member will be recorded. Members are asked to note, in accordance with the Council's current public speaking planning committee protocol, that after the objector and supporter have spoken exceptionally, the chair or committee members, through the chair, may ask speakers to clarify matters relating to their presentation. I note that if a member arrives after the start of an application or leaves the chamber once that application has been started, with only one application today, so effectively anyone who leaves during this item will be unable to take any further part in the application, either by way of entering the debate, questions or clarification, or the vote. So moving on to item 2 on the agenda, Simon Hill, do we have any apologies for absence?
Yes, Chair, we have apologies from Councillors Bradnam, Fain, Acarn, M. Carn, Handley, Redrup, Sanford and R. Williams.
Thank you.
Councillor Leeming is a substitute.
Thank you. So moving to item 3, members, we now move to declarations of interest. Do any members have any interest to declare in relation to the business today on the agenda? And I just remind, if any interest subsequently becomes apparent, please would you raise it at that point, but no conflict of interest or declarations. Thank you. So just the background, this application is unusual in that it previously came to committee in September. It seeks both a first and second floor extension to existing ground floor commercial business and service premises Class E and the library Class F1D to create 15 residential apartments, including a communal terrace, together with an associated communal entrance service building, including first and second floor commercial units, Class E, cycle parking, refuse provision, landscaping, the reconfiguration of an established car park, substation and associated infrastructure works. The site was visited by members of the committee on the 3rd of December. The recommendation from officers is to approve subject to conditions and a satisfactory agreement on section 106. Could I now ask Phoebe Carter to introduce the item, please?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. So this is an application for the first and second floor extension above the existing ground floor commercial business and service premises use class E and a library use class F1D to create 15 residential apartments, including a commercial terrace together with associated communal entrance service building, including first and second floor commercial unit. Use class E, cycle parking, refuse provision, landscaping and the reconfiguration of the established car park, substation and associated infrastructure. Before I start the presentation, I just would like to raise an update to condition 28, which is for water usage. Condition 28, we're just looking to alter the wording of the condition to a compliance with the updated water strategy, providing water specification to ensure the residential units do not exceed 100 litres per person per day. Instead of 110 litres per person per day, which was set out within the water strategy provided with the supporting information. Sorry, just as a slight update, instead of associated communal, second floor communal unit instead. So this is the location plan within the centre of Histon. So the red line extends around the plot which is shown here, with the commercial terrace and arcade of shops and the library, which the units are proposed to be built above. The Tesco supermarket, which is located here, is within the same ownership of the applicants, but does not form part of the application. The entrance to the car park is located to the east of the site in here, and there is open green space to the front of the site and another to the side. The Gables, located where you can see my pointer here, is a Grade 2 listed building, and there are 3 locally listed buildings within the neighbourhood plan, which include the Red Lion, the front of the St Andrew Centre here, and Brook House to the rear of the site. There is a site history which I'd just like to take you through very briefly. So in 2019, an application was approved for the extension and refurbishment of the existing ground floor commercial and retail units, 1 to 4, comprising of, at the time, A1 shops, which are now set out as Class E and Class F. And with then an extension to the existing supermarket building and including 9 one-bedroom residential units to the first floor of the Tesco's, what is now the Tesco supermarket. So this is what the arcade of shops previously looked like in here, and the permission has been started with the upgrade to these commercial units, which is now what the site looks like from the frontage, but no works have commenced above the existing supermarket. So this is just showing you the existing car parking space to the rear of the site and the side. There are currently no car parking layout within the site. It is just a free-for-all car parking. However, it would fit approximately 44 vehicles. There are a row of trees to the rear of the site which are going to have very minimal impact with the extensions. So this is the proposed site plan. There are 15 car parking spaces, including 1 disabled, which would be 1 car parking space per residential unit, which all have electric vehicle charging proposed, and then car parking for the retail units to the side and also some in here to the rear of the units. To the rear of the supermarket is a new building here, which is the access and cycle parking in here, including some electric cycle charging points and the bin stores for the residential units. So the ground floor, as I said, very minimal changes to the existing arcade. This new building is proposed here to the side and to of the library and to the rear of the supermarket. There is also a fire escape on the other side as well. The proposed first floor, the 15 units are set out on with a mixture of 1 and 2 bed units, and they are accessed via an accessway from the stairwell with a light wells and an internal circulation. All of the proposed residential units have dual aspect and they meet space standards and they accord with Part O of the building regulations. A daylight and sunlight assessment has also been provided to ensure that all of the residential units meet daylight and sunlight levels. On the second floor, there is also a communal terrace for all of the residents of the apartments. Each apartment also has private external space in the form of either a winter garden and or balcony. You can see on the proposed roof plan, solar panels are proposed and a green roof is also proposed. There is also 1 chimney, which I'll also show you on the elevations, which is for the extraction for the existing restaurant at the commercial level to ensure that there are no odour impacts on the dwellings. So these are the proposed front elevations. Towards the school hill, it is just a first floor extension proposed, stepping up to 2 stories above the remaining of the units. And in here is where the commercial unit is. Not the commercial unit, apologies, where the communal terrace is. And this here is the access and access building. These are the proposed rear elevations. Again, you can see in here the restaurant extract up here and the winter gardens proposed. These are just some side elevations and a section through just showing the communal walkway and central access for the flats. So this is a massing comparison of the 2019 application, which is shown in green at the top alongside the grade 2 listed building, the gables. So the proposed units are then shown down here in purple. The proposed units are, despite being 1 story higher than the previously approved, are only 2.1 metres taller than the previously approved scheme. Given the setback from the road, there is very minimal difference in height when viewed from the high street. In addition, the separation between the listed buildings and the proposed scheme has significantly increased. And again, here are some more massing comparisons showing the difference between the previously approved scheme down here in green below and in purple above. And this dotted line in here shows the proposed height of the previously approved scheme, which the conservation officers did not raise any objections to in the previous application. And here's a visual of the proposed frontage onto School Hill. So there have been objections to the applications from third parties, which include heritage impacts, density, scale, character, highway impact, parking, residential amenity, drainage, and the impact of the 2019 application being built out. In regards to the 2019 application being built out, this cannot be built out with this scheme. Because of the proposed access building to the rear, they can't implement both schemes. And if that was to come forward, a new scheme would have to be assessed by the planning officers. The highways impacts, we have not received any objections from the Highways Authority regarding the alterations, and they raised no issue with the proposed access into the site. The car parking of the site, the current site, does not meet the requirements of either the local plan or the Histon and Impington neighbourhood plan with the numbers. The site is within a rural centre and is a highly sustainable location, and the proposed layout is considered to be an improvement. A condition has been attached to improve the parking with a car parking management scheme, which will be attached to the permission, and secure parking for the residential flats have been provided. In regards to drainage, the lead local flood authority have assessed the application and have raised no issue subject to the conditions which have been attached to the application. Officers have assessed the amenity of the neighbouring properties within the report and are satisfied that the proposal would not lead to a significantly harmful loss of light, overbearing impact or loss of privacy. And a further daylight sunlight hazard assessment was submitted, which has assessed the impact on the surrounding properties as well. In regards to the harm to the setting of the listed building, I've just shown you some comparisons, and it's noted that the proposal is now set approximately 40 metres away from the gables. Additionally, the height of the scheme is only marginally higher. Overall, officers considered the redevelopment of the existing brownfield site, including 15 1- and 2-bedroom flats, including 6 affordable units, and the location within a highly sustainable location, centrally located within a rural centre, would not solely be dependent on access by car. On balance, there is the scale and massing of the proposal would lead to significant less than substantial harm to the listed building and the conservation area, and the parking provision is under the indicative parking levels in the local plan and neighbourhood plan. However, officers consider that on balance, the addition of the affordable units within the local centre weighs in favour of the application, and officers will recommend approval subject to conditions and the section 106. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Phoebe. Okay, so we now have 3 speakers on this application.
Councillors get to do clarification.
Oops, sorry, indeed, yes. So are there any points of clarification from the members? Apologies for reversing the order there.
Got Councillor Leeming, Chair.
Okay, yes, Councillor Leeming.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to refer to paragraph 9.33 in our report packs. It says that the site lies within the development framework, and therefore the applicant should be providing 40% affordable housing in the site, in keeping with the affordable housing policy. However, in this instance, affordable housing in compliance with policy H10 is not being provided, instead proposing building to rent as set out above. Given that the site is only for 15 units, clustering and distribution should not be impacted by the design. Could I ask how the building to rent change meets the requirement for 40% affordable housing, please?
Thank you.
Thank you. So policy H10 doesn't include build to rent as affordable. It's a new type of affordable housing, and which hasn't been included within the local plan because it is a relatively new provision. And given that it's within the Greater Cambridge Housing Strategy 2024 to 2029, Annex 5 sets out the details regarding build to rent. So it's whilst it's not part of our local plan for affordable provision is going to be provided by the build to rent or through the build to rent scheme. So it is a different type of affordable housing. It's not within the local plan, which is why it cannot meet the policy, but it is within the Greater Cambridge Housing Strategy as a type of affordable housing, which is to be considered. So that's why. And regard to the clustering, because it's all within the same area, normally on a large housing scheme, we wouldn't want all of the affordable housing units together. We'd want them sort of spread within the scheme, so you don't just get one part of the scheme as affordable. But because this is just a single block of flats above the existing shop units, we aren't referring to a cluster of housing in this instance.
Thank you, Phoebe. Councillor Toomey Hawkins.
Thank you, Chair. Regarding the heritage asset, if we have the conservation officer to hand, perhaps there could be an explanation of why this application is considered more harmful than the 2019 one, which seemed to be closer to the road than this one is. I'm just not clear about that. And there was no objection at the time.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Hawkins. Do we have any officer comments on that?
Thank you. We don't have the conservation officers with us, and so I can't really assess why that scheme was considered to be less harmful than the existing scheme in regard to the impact on the Gables listed building. The conservation officer has set out the concerns regarding the two-storey extension within their comments regarding it, and I think that might be part of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, yes. Michael, would you like
Thank you, Chair. So if I could just come in, I happen to be the officer who dealt with the 2019 scheme. Just as a point of clarification, the Conservation Officer did object to the 2019 scheme on heritage grounds, but officers felt the public benefits outweighed.
Yes, Councillor Heather Williams, I think you had
Yes.
some
Thank you, Chair.
clarification
So,
points.
through yourself, just from the presentation, I became a little bit unclear about the fallback position because you said about other applications being required. So when it comes to parking, the fallback position, what is the difference between the 2019 application and state? So what are the, have we got that fallback position? Could the 2019 application proceed if this wasn't given permission? And just in relation to condition 30, when it comes to materials, cladding is on the outside, which isn't really used anywhere else. Is it a case of the materials would be what type of cladding, or would it be that it might be decided not to have cladding and have brick or something else? So just some more flesh on how far that condition can go for materials.
Thank you. Can we have some comments on that from the officers?
So in regard to the 2019 application, it has been implemented and therefore it could be built out at any point going forward because it was started within the 3 years from the application starting. So the fallback position is that this could be built out and that put 9 one-bed residential units above the Tesco store with including the extension to the rear, and that allocated 6 car parking spaces for those units and the rest will remain for the shopping units. This application, because it is building over where the previous extension for the 2019 application would have extended to, I think I can bring up a slide in 1 second to help. So this here shows the proposed site plan of the Tesco's, which extended this unit here to the rear. And this red line shows the previous line of the arcade. So this part of the arcade has been built out in here, where the extension to the supermarket hasn't been built out. In implementing this permission, it would require a extension to come in just where I'm showing here, and therefore both permissions could not be built out at the same time. And if anything was to therefore come over the supermarket, a separate planning permission would have to be submitted to the authority to assess. In regards to materials, the materials condition, it is proposed in cladding. The materials would have to be similar to what is shown on the proposed plans. So it wouldn't allow to be a completely new material proposed. So we couldn't change it to brick as part of a material condition. It would have to be similar to what is on the proposed plans.
Thank you.
Councillor Leeming, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have one further question. So this whole site within the red line boundary is proposed to be a mixture of retail and residential. When we look through the list of parking that's provided, the application doesn't meet the Histon local plans requirement for the number of parking places per residential flat. In addition, we have the background entity of a supermarket and retail commercial units. When the local plan speaks about this being in the centre of a village, that there's sustainable travel available, I think it I'm wondering how much weight to put in the balance that actually this is a supermarket and people do drive to the supermarket. It's the way people behave that, you know, if they're going to buy heavy loads of shopping, they will drive to the supermarket. I'm wondering how to put this in the balance between the residential parking, which this isn't meeting the requirement that we would usually expect, but also the background need for parking for a residential unit. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we have some commentary on that, please?
Thank you. So to meet the parking standards in the local plan and would require 87 car parking spaces, technically. So the existing has approximately 44 car parking spaces. And if we looked at the local plan, it should provide 87 car parking spaces. So as part of the additional information that has been put forward to the council, a supplementary note and parking information was submitted, which carried out a 24-hour survey of the site to set out the parking figures. Additionally, data has been provided from the 2021 census as to the sort of parking levels for both flats and houses, especially within the area. And with those, the figures provided support that 15 spaces or 1 space per flat would be sufficient for the development of this nature. Additionally, the car parking spaces provided is 5 lower, I believe, than the previous 2019 application. And the proposal has a condition regarding a car parking management plan, which sets out a 45-minute turnover. Currently, it appears that people are parking there for significantly longer periods and not necessarily using the facilities. There is also a car park that belongs to the parish council that is approximately 50 metres away from the site, situated off the high street as well, which provides parking for the village. Additionally, it is in a commercial, it's in the heart of a rural centre, so it is easily accessible by other means of transport as well. Thank you.
So the development is a mixture of 1, 2, and I think there's a 4-bedroom flat in here as well. A 4-bedroom property. Sorry.
Yes.
It's 2 bedroom for 4 people. I understand now. So there's 1 and 2 bedroom flats. So usually with a 2-bedroom flat, I suppose there would be a provision for how many spaces usually?
It differs between the local plan and the neighbourhood plan between 1.5 spaces or 2 spaces.
And if you were the second person in this 2-bedroom flat, you have 1 allocated residential space. What would the second person do if there were 2 cars to this property? Would they be using the 45-minute provision in the retail car park, or is the recommendation that they would park in this other village car park down the road?
The flats would come with a single car parking space. If the occupants had more than 1 car, then that would be, they would likely have to park on a local street.
Okay, thank you. I have a question, if I may, also on the same topic. Just really clarification on page 32 of our papers, paragraph 9.117. And there's some confusing wording, I think, in the middle of that paragraph, because it's saying sort of in mitigation of that the number of parking spaces for the residents isn't quite compliant. But saying that in a survey, 12% of households living in houses did not own a car. And then it says, whereas 60% of corresponding figures living in flats was 60%. But I think there's a typo there somewhere. Could you just clarify what that meant? I mean, I wondered, did it mean that people living in flats, or of those living in flats, 60% did not own a car?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you very much. If I may, I just did have one other question. I think this really is a clarification. In the design panel report, apologies, I'll just find. Oh, yes, I think it must be this one here. Yes, on page 62 of the pack, and that's the architecture comments by Russell Brown. And in the fourth paragraph, it talks of a concern at the inclusion of internal bedrooms with no windows for daylight. And I wasn't sure whether that was referring to the Bury St Edmunds sort of exemplar case, or was it an earlier version of the application as proposed? And could you just clarify that that's not the case in what we're seeing here today?
That's no longer the case. This was a part of the pre-application process and the design of the scheme.
Thank you very much. Okay, do we have any further questions from members? That's not the case. We move on to the public speakers. Here's my face in the agenda now. Yes, okay, so I think the first on my list is Stephen Tromans, who is speaking for residents to make their representation. Okay, thank you. If you'd like to come forward. And so, as I explained earlier, you have 3 minutes, and I will warn you at 2 minutes 30 that you've got 30 seconds left, if that's okay. So would you like to make your presentation now? Thank you.
Good morning, Chair. Thank you. I've been asked to represent the views of other objectors to this proposal. The first issue is heritage. The Conservation Officer recommends refusal because of impact on the conservation area and the setting of the listed building. The scale and the dominating design of the proposed two-storey flats are alien to this setting. They'll be a permanent eyesore, and they are contrary to local plan policy. Secondly, the proposal will result in a significant loss of off-street parking for users of village centre facilities, which will lead to increased pressure on the limited unrestricted on-street parking available in the centre, and will very likely, in the long term, harm the viability of the centre businesses. The applicant's supplementary note on parking is flawed, as shown by the professional review commissioned by the Parish Council and by the many clear comments made by local residents. The needs of important facilities, such as the restaurant, cafe, opticians and library, where users are likely to need longer-term parking than 45 minutes, have essentially been ignored and glossed over. The parking management has simply not been thought through, and its consequences have not been assessed. Third, it's clear that Barbastelle bats are present around the trees and brook at the site's northern boundary. These are a priority protected species, yet no bat survey has been undertaken. The applicant's own study describes the boundary as a native species-rich hedgerow with some, not negligible, bat roost potential. The neighbourhood plan isn't opposed to residential development in this location, but this should not come at the cost of permanent harm to heritage assets or jeopardising the viability of the businesses and community services of the centre. What appears to sway officers in their recommendation is the lure of affordable accommodation. The rent of those 6 flats subject to it will be discounted by 20% for a 15-year period. That's the bare minimum acceptable figure, which presumably is all that officers have been able to negotiate. There is an important calculation by an objector that the occupant of a single-bedroom flat in the development after that discount would need to be earning a gross annual salary of £44,000, with 30% of that going on
Please
rent.
bring your comments to close.
Query if that's genuinely affordable. So in summary, members are being invited to approve a development which will permanently harm heritage assets, impose serious parking problems which may long-term jeopardise the viability of the core of the village, and may impact priority species of bats, in return for a temporary affordable housing benefit, which may well turn out not to be affordable at all, on a very limited number of units. The right thing to do, as last time, is to refuse. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tromans, and thank you for being so accurate on your timing. So, do we ask questions now or go through the whole? Okay, yeah, so do we have some questions from any of the councillors? Or shall we move on to the next speaker? Oh, Councillor Hawkins.
Thank you for your presentation. Regarding your comment on the bats, there's been no objection from our statutory consultees here that there's no evidence of bats roosting. So why is that an issue with residents?
Thank you. There is clear evidence from local residents of the presence of bats. The brook and the trees and the hedgerows lining it are quite clearly a likely commuting and feeding corridor for bats. And we know that bats do roost in the church, St Andrew's Church, and in the Abbeyfield set-aside land, slightly to the north of the site. Now, the report, I believe, talked about there being negligible, the officer's report, negligible bat roosting potential in those trees. That's not accurate on my reading. Essentially, the report about negligible potential for roosting was in relation to the buildings on the site. There's been no survey of the trees, and indeed the MK ecology survey carried out by the applicants did indicate that there was some, albeit probably limited, bat roosting potential in the trees. So we simply don't know. There is a condition relating to construction environmental management plans, but that's one thing. There's also the concern of the use of these premises. You'll have seen that there are windows and balconies facing out at the back, which will be emitting light. We don't know what the impact of that will be on bats, because no one has seen fit to do a survey and look. So that's our point.
Thank you. Any other points of? Yes, Councillor Leeming.
Thank you, and thank you for coming today. I'd like to ask a little bit more about the comments that you made about the buy-to-rent scheme and affordable housing. What was the basis of your calculation?
Yes.
I know you had limited time in your speech, so if you could expand a little bit more on how you calculated those figures, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Yes. So this is obviously, I think, as you picked up in your question, a novel form of affordable housing, which is not at the moment supported by policy in the local plan. So there wouldn't be, I think, compliance with the local plan in terms of affordable housing. There would be this new form of approach, which is building to rent. And as I understand it from the policy material which the officer referred to, the figures which appear to be in the papers relating to a 20% discount for 15 years are the minimum under that policy. So one is getting the minimum for 6 flats. And as one, I think, very informed objector worked out in their objections, actually that's still a pretty steep rent when you take into account local housing cost figures and service charge. So our question really is how affordable is that actually? and it's only on offer for a period of 15 years, whereas we're setting against that permanent effects on parking and on heritage. That's the point, essentially.
Thank you. We do have a housing officer on standby to answer questions around this new categorisation. Perhaps that would be helpful. So who do we have?
Do you want to do that during the debate, Chair, before the debate?
Vanessa suggested it.
Should we do that before the debate and give Julie time to do it?
Yeah, she needs to come in. I'll see if we can bring her in now while it's a fresh question.
I think Mike and Faith would like to come in on the back. They said during the debate if they're asked.
Yeah, do they want to come back on that first?
I don't think we can now, can we? It's in the debate.
Sorry?
Well,
It has to be in the debate.
if we can, you can bring it. Yeah, we're bringing Julie.
She's
Bring
joining
Julie.
Yes.
Just a question of clarification.
Okay. Councillor Hawkins.
Thank you. Regarding the experience or the knowledge of the person who, before we go any further, the person who did this calculation that was referred to, are they a landlord? Are they owner of a BTR, or what's their qualifications? Also, we can ascertain how valid this calculation is.
One doesn't know from because there are no names attached to those that are in the public domain. So I don't know is the true answer to that. But it's certainly, if you read it, a well-informed statement. It makes a great deal of sense, and it does appear to come with some knowledge of local housing figures and the likely service charge.
Thank you. So, shall I invite Julie to? Yes, okay. Julie, would you like to? Have you been listening to the debate so far? Okay. Who would be best to summarise the question? Because I don't think I've been able to closely follow. Would you, Vice Chair, please?
I'm sure everybody will shout if I've got this wrong. But Julie, if you could just give us a summarise. The issue seems to be around the affordable housing we've here being a building for rental purposes, and there's clarification that's a 20% reduction in rent, but that only lasts for 15 years. And then questions around the fact that a calculation of £44,000 has been given to us as a single person's wage required to be able to get one of these, and whether it's affordable. I think that's a summary of the debate on affordable housing, if members are happy with my conclusion on that.
Yes.
And some clarification around the implications and how this is, because it's post-local plan and its creation, how it is allowed to be relied upon.
Yes. And thank you. Just before you take that question, Julie, would you please introduce yourself and your role within the council?
Of course. Thank you, Chair. So hello, everyone. I'm Julie Fletcher. I'm the Service Manager for Housing Strategy at South Cambs District Council. So in terms of build to rent, this is different from our traditional affordable housing, as I'm sure you're aware. So within a build to rent scheme, the overall scheme is managed by one landlord, so we don't have a separate housing provider to take on the affordable rented accommodation. So it's all managed by the one managing agent, and the affordable private rent is 20% discount off of a market rent. Now we have the housing strategy, which gives some sort of policy guidance to that, and this is really taken from national guidance in terms of best practice and also in terms of sort of viability. Forgive me again, what was the actual question in terms of the so in terms of the affordable rent, you mentioned that it's a 15-year sort of in perpetuity. I don't believe that's quite correct. So what will happen with a build to rent scheme is that it will be build to rent for a certain period, and we recommend 15 years. There's a clawback criteria if it wasn't to be build to rent for the full 15 years, and that applies to both sort of the market housing as well as the affordable rented, the affordable private rent. So there would be a clawback, so that if we were to lose the affordable private rent, we would take some money in lieu of that. You also mentioned the 44,000 as a sort of average single person income. I think that's probably a little bit high. I would have thought sort of average incomes are around the sort of 35 mark, but we do have information on that, and I can certainly look that up in terms of sort of incomes at the moment. But from my experience, I think that's slightly high. Sure, I'll stay online. Okay, thank you.
The council's ecology officer was satisfied this and said that no further surveys were required.
Thank you. Does that conclude your comments? Thank you. Right, so thank you very much, Mr. Jones. So if we could now move on to the next contributor, and that will be Mr. Justin Bainton, who is speaking as agent for the applicant to make their representation. Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much. And as before, you have 3 minutes, and I will remind you at 2 minutes 30. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak at Planning Committee. The applicant, Camel Projects, is a property investment business and has made significant investment in the premises, having refurbished the existing retail units, which are occupied by well-respected tenants, including the local library, to the benefit of the village. The scheme is introducing a residential element and is designed to help bring vitality to the village, providing accommodation for the younger generation in the village that has a lot of large and expensive houses which are simply unaffordable. These 1 and 2 bed units will help fulfil that need. This scheme is supported by Histon's own neighbourhood plan that encourages 1 and 2 bedroom dwellings. Moreover, the Histon and Impington Village Design Guide supports the redevelopment of the site and uplift in an otherwise functional but not very attractive set of buildings. The National Planning Policy Framework lends strong support to mixed-use developments with substantial weight given to using brownfield land and supports opportunities to use airspace above existing commercial premises for new homes. This is exactly the type of highly sustainable site that should be better utilised to meet these needs. A minimum of 20% homes in build-to-rent developments are required to provide affordable private rent. This scheme will deliver 40%, which is a significant public benefit. Although there's an objection from conservation, the scheme will follow the recommendations of the Design Review Panel, which considered 3-storey gable design setback from the road frontage as appropriate development. The scheme will enhance the visual quality of the street scene to the benefit of the character of the conservation area, and the design is considered to be entirely appropriate for its location. With regards to car parking, although the scheme results in a net increase in 6 residential units compared to the 2019 consent. The redesigned car park would accommodate 3 more spaces, 33 in total, and with no extension to the convenience store as previously proposed, will reduce the pressure for on-site car parking compared to the expanded consent. Survey work has determined that 40% of Tesco customers arrive by non-car modes, majority by foot. The scheme will seek to provide a better, safer, workable parking layout, balancing the on-site parking provision whilst encouraging alternative transport modes as part of a design-led scheme. The scheme provides 58 cycle spaces for the commercial units and 18 for the residential. Unauthorised car parking currently equates to 15% of users of the car park, and with suitable controls, operating capacity of the car park can be enhanced in recognition that this is not a long-stay public car park.
You have 30 seconds to go now.
The Highway Authority have raised no objections to the scheme. In conclusion, substantial weight should be given to using brownfield land for this purpose. The scheme delivers 30% biodiversity net gain. The scheme delivers renewable energy with a 68% in carbon emission reductions over the 2021 building regulations. The scheme is providing 1 and 2 bed dwellings at the heart of the village, providing affordable provision which is well needed, resulting in a high quality scheme which will enhance the local environment. And with no objections to the Highway Authority, we recommend that and hope that members can support the scheme. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Bateson. Do we have questions of clarification? Councillor Toomey Hawkins.
Thank you very much, Chair. Can you clarify, please, how many cycle parking spaces did you say were available?
The scheme is providing 58 for the commercial premises and 18 for the residential element of the scheme.
Right. Okay, and of those, are there any spaces to be provided for cargo bikes? Is that something that you... Anyway, please answer that first.
Yeah, sorry, there's limited space for cargo bikes because the cycle spaces for the residential element are within the confines of the building, within the building itself. So within that, they're obviously ordered at 1 metre centres for the cycle parking with Sheffield hoops. I would say that given the nature of the units, which are sort of a smaller size, it's not generally. You can't say there won't be no families because there could be, but it's more geared towards, I guess, people who perhaps don't have the need for cargo bikes. But that's the position.
I'm thinking more in terms of those who might use the cargo bikes to come shopping or to use the shops or whatever it is. But noted, thank you. If I may, Chair, regarding utilities to the flats, are you intending to provide individual meters to each of the flats? Because this is an important thing for them to be able to monitor their own and pay for their own usage.
Sorry, is this in relation to utilities you're referring to?
Gas and electric and whatever else.
We haven't got into that level of detail with the scheme. I would strongly suspect that we would be providing individual meters because that would need to be individual occupiers who need to have ownership of their own usage of energy. But as I said, we haven't quite got into that level of detail in terms of discussing that element of the scheme.
Sorry, Chair, if I may, I think we need to note that because some of the new builds are tending to not have individual meters and that can be very difficult. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for making that point. I think at some point in our report does reference water metering, but I'm not sure as an informative or a condition. I can't quite remember, but I agree. All utilities are important to be separately meters, in my view. Oh yes, of course.
Please.
Councillor Hawkins.
One last question. External lighting. Are you proposing to have external lighting on the flats or not?
I think there will need to be some external lighting. I think that would need to be subject to a condition where precise details can be agreed, but you would expect that for the functioning of the site, there'd need to be some lighting.
Thank you. Yes, okay. Councillor Leeming.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to ask about the parking again. So there was a study that said that the average duration for parking was 22 minutes. Presumably that will include a whole range of people, from someone who's nipped into a shop to buy a newspaper and is there for 3 minutes, and somebody who's visiting a restaurant and may wish to sit there for 2 hours. You've come up with this figure of 45 minutes, what is that based on? That's my first question. The second one is, when there are businesses that by the nature of their trade would need people to stay, would people want to stay in that business longer, a restaurant, possibly a library, what recourse do they have with this car parking arrangement? Who is going to run the car parking monitoring? Would this be a private camera kind of setup? How would that actually work, please?
Thank you.
Yeah, there'd be a vehicle recognition system. I think that the use of car park, the problem that's currently occurring is it's being used by some, not everybody, but there's an element of using it as a public car park for longer periods, not connected to the development, which is restricting obviously the operational capacity of the car park. So there's an opportunity through a car parking management plan to find the right balance between obviously meeting the needs of customers, which is obviously absolutely paramount to the applicant. They clearly want a successful functioning commercial entity on the site, and that's what they've invested in. That's what they'll continue to do so, but also preventing perhaps unauthorised longer-term car parking. The suggestion at this stage is that 45 minutes for the use of principally the Tesco units, where we've got data which says that they use for 22 minutes, and that's the average use of the car park, provides a good amount of leeway. I think if you were going to the restaurant, there'd need to be recognition that through it's just down to an operational management approach, but you'd need to recognise that somebody might be there for an hour and a half, and I think there'll be obviously there's plenty of approaches which I've seen work well, where you go into the commercial premises, you get something stamped, and that's the fact you're on site for longer than 45 minutes is perfectly acceptable. So there is a condition imposed on the as part of the application, and we'll need to work through the details. But I think that the principle is to actually help the car park to work in a slightly more ordered and sensible way than currently happens.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm just sort of thinking about whether this 45-minute limit would damage existing businesses there, and we can talk about this as a theory now, but there's nothing to sort of back it up at the moment in terms of what would actually be implemented. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Heather Williams.
Thank you, Chair. So just a question to the applicant, just to make sure that they're fully aware. So questions that have been asked by members. When it goes back to individual meters, condition 18, you said that it hasn't been thought through yet, but condition 18 does say each apartment shall be fitted with a means for future occupiers to monitor all of their own electric and water and gas consumption. So that condition suggests that it is their consumption, not anybody else's. So making sure that's something that is understood in case this is approved. And also in condition 21, is it understood that the 45 minutes might be what you've calculated but might not be accepted by the authority as part of the parking management plan, where impact on other businesses will be considered?
Yeah, I think my use of words is probably a bit clumsy in terms of meter monitoring. I would fully, which is what you just referred to, expect that to be happening on an individual basis, monitored on that basis. What I meant was that in terms of the detailed design of more water meters and the functionality of the building, in terms of the internal arrangements, that's obviously comes at the next stage, but in principle, very much that would be the case.
So there is, you would be complying with these conditions, not in principle, you would be complying.
Yes, we would be, and we would need to be.
Thank you.
Thank you. I just have one question. Oh, to Casalini, are you about to? No, okay, you're done. I noticed one of the comments, I think, in the pack relates to, I mean, I think this, the sort of restaurant and the sort of, you know, if I could describe it as such, the cafe society, it's a very nice feature of that area. I think that you do see people eating out on a terrace or having a coffee, especially in the summer. But so I think the fear was that, you know, the possible overlooking might interfere with that. But I just wondered if you had any comments on that. Reassure that sort of important part of the village ecosystem, if you like, is not overly disturbed.
I think I would see the introduction of residential as part of a mixed-use scheme as being highly beneficial to the site, improving natural surveillance, particularly in the hours after dark when the commercial premises are shut. I think the actual activity that's generated by a mixed-use scheme would be very beneficial both to the commercial units and obviously provide much needed affordable accommodation for occupiers. So I see only benefits in that regard.
Thank you. Do you have any other questions of clarification? In that case, thank you very much, Mr. Bainton. Good. Now I'll move on to the next speaker on the list, which is Councillor Simon Jocelyn. Are you with us today? Yes, thank you. Yes, and could I, thank you very much, confirm that you have the permission of the Parish Council to speak on their behalf? I think, yes, you need to confirm first. Yes, okay. I think we need the confirmation first, if we just follow the procedure, if that's okay. Yeah. Oh.
Yes, I speak on behalf of the Histon Islington Parish Council Planning Committee.
Okay. And you have their permission? Yeah. Yes, okay. So I wasn't quite sure, were you asking for a bit of extra time to cover it?
I just want to highlight something that I feel is missing from the planning officer's summary, which actually is a key component.
I think you'll have to cover that within the 3 minutes, if you can.
Lots to cover.
Otherwise, we risk kind of deviating from the procedure, which would not be the right thing. Okay, would you like to start your comments then, please?
Yes, thank you. This application was received November 2023. Since then, Parish Council Planning Committee have had this on 5 agendas, as well as been on this committee's agenda 11th of September, where I highlight the many issues with this application, which not relate to just parking, the reason the committee originally refused, but also deliveries, highway safety, damage to commercial core, low quality design, shading, noise pollution, out of place city styling, risk of water runoff, contamination of the brook, structural damage to neighbouring properties, why the Conservation Officer objects, broken promises, errors in site layout. In my 8 years on the Planning Committee, 5 as chair, I can't remember meetings where more residents have attended to air their many concerns on this. Not only a concern that a vast number of the village object, but the fact too, maybe more tenants suggests this is unsuitable, also against 7 of our neighbourhood plan points, where yes votes were over 90% in 2021, namely HIMO 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 12, as well as points 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 and 12 of the Village Design Guide. We're not quite a full house. I'm not sure how many of you looked at the February swept path analysis document published 26th of March, but I have scrutinised this and with a scale model followed the path a 10-metre rigid lorry should make to egress the site in a forward motion, a requirement put down by Tesco's in their refusal comments. With the existing arrangements, lorries regularly exit the site in reverse. That is, if they enter the car park. Numerous residents witness lorries parking on the high street, partially blocking the exit. Fences within the current car park have been damaged by vehicles manoeuvring the site. If turning a 10-metre rigid body lorry is difficult now, you can imagine how difficult it would be if this application was passed. It appears the swept path analysis drawing was done after the site layout was published. Hence, the movements are drawn out to the plans, not the plans drawn out to how a vehicle can turn. You may also notice that a lorry entering the car park is less than 400 millimetres away from space 16. That's their drawing. And if customer in space 16 and residents in spaces 21 and to 26 are not perfectly parked within the lines, if they fit in the lines, the lorry may not be able to navigate to the service bay or will be unable to turn. 5 spaces are cordoned off prior to delivery being made, though not sure if this is for 5 hours or 1. Currently, residents have seen cones left out for numerous hours. Of course, it would be easier if an additional 6 spaces, 35, 21 to 25, were cordoned off. Customers and residents would then have to find somewhere else to park, but that doesn't seem to be a concern to the applicant. One assumes a lorry driver with an additional 28 drops to make before a compulsory break will spend a few extra minutes performing this near impossible dance, but if it's quicker and easier to reverse out, there you go. Now, a meal at the cafe restaurant should be an enjoyable, unrushed experience. The comment about, the 7 spaces outside the curtilage, which highways did mention they should not be counting, and they are counting those. Thank you.
Councillors, do we have points of clarification? Yes, Councillor Toomey Hawkins.
Thank you, Councillor Jocelyn, for your presentation. Can you clarify the situation with the deliveries? I mean, surely with the way things are now, there is no change, there is no significant change to the, where lorries can go in. Entrance to?
The lorry entering, yes, but when you get to the back where the service area is, that area, there is a much larger area there. You've got, with this new scheme, you've got these additional spaces effectively in the middle between the service area and between the back. They are not there now, so hence a lorry, although difficult, can now turn round. If you look at that swept path analysis document, that is certainly a near impossible move for a 10-metre rigid body lorry.
I see.
Which, I say, at the moment, because those spaces do not exist, that isn't so much of a problem at the moment.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Heather Williams, in that case, you have a question.
Thank you, Chair. Through yourself. In relation to the lorries, obviously that's an issue with the current permission for the Tesco's. And if there are any breaches to those policies, first of all, would encourage that you report them to the Enforcement Department or Compliance Department. Because obviously the highways have assessed this situation. I agree with yourself, it's tight, but the highways have said it's okay. So I'd just like to make that encouragement to go to compliance if there are irregularities or things that you feel that are unsafe with the previous application, but not something obviously we can debate here later on today. My question to yourself is, you said 7 neighbourhood plan points, and I appreciate you were under time pressure, but I got lost after the second number. So if you wouldn't mind, just a little bit slower this time, referencing the, you said there was against 7 neighbourhood plan points. If you could just reference those a little slower for me, and I'll try and keep up this time.
Yes, of course. Let me just tell you the exact names of those points. Right, so HMO1, which is high quality design. HMO2, interesting buildings. HMO3, sorry, just numbers. Yeah, oh, I'm sorry. Yes, okay, so that's 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, and 12. Those are the neighbourhood plan points.
Sorry. So, any other questions from my colleagues? I don't know, I think Councillor Williams touched on this, but in relation to the lorry turning issue, did you investigate that in relation
now,
to the...
If you look at the dates, of the swept path analysis document, if you look at the date of Tesco's objection, and you look at the dates of the highways, I don't believe highways and Tesco's would not have seen that swept path analysis document. They would not have seen that before they made their recommendations. And also, the highways may not necessarily have known that it would be a 10-metre rigid body lorry until Tesco's made it clear that is what we will use. So although highways may not object to that, they may not have realised it will be a 10-metre rigid body lorry entering the car park.
Thank you. And what I wanted to ask was whether this topic came up in relation to the previous application to build on top of the Tesco store itself, and that also resulted in a reconfiguration of the car park. Was the previous application better or worse or about the same in that regard?
Now, the first iteration of this application which was passed was withdrawn. Because of comments made, they withdrew it, moved it further back, and did quite a bit of reconfiguration. So the second time round, and I've highlighted directly to the owner of the site, that the layout is not exactly as per plan, but I don't remember there being any issues or comments with regards to the lorry. Again, it's a complete configuration. The existing Tesco's site, this existing supermarket site will be demolished and rebuilt. So you would have thought they're going to completely reconfigure this to enable lorry delivery.
So, Timmy Hawkins.
Okay, still letting me talk. Thank you. I was just looking at your neighbourhood plan policy 7, because that's one of the ones that you have indicated that this application is against. However, it does support residential uses, in particular 1 and 2 bedroom flats, some of which are affordable. And consider appropriate above ground floor level on this particular site. And there's other points about improving the parking, retaining the current level of commercial space. So I'm kind of not clear why you're saying that HIM 07 is not being, or is one of the policies that this application is against.
We also talk about scale.
Sure.
Although we support the School Hill site being redesigned, when we're talking about the height, the scale that it is, that is against the plan. We talk about a scale. We're talking about reasonable.
Okay, so what you're saying is there's, are you saying that there's too many residential units being provided?
I'm saying it's too tall. For 1 point, I would say it's too tall and too dense.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry. Our final speaker, I think, Councillor James Rickson, who will be speaking as a local member. Councillor, Thank you. You also have 3 minutes, and I'll remind you at 2 minutes 30. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I want to use my 3 minutes just to focus particularly on the parking. But just before that, there was something flashed up in relation to the bats and the description there, and it mentioned the off-site ditch to the north. Well, that's what this description. I just think I just want to clarify whether that was referring to the brook that runs along the north of the site. So I wouldn't necessarily refer to it as a ditch.
Yeah. We have to keep within the 3 minutes.
That's absolutely fine. But so particularly in the parking, I think there's a number of inaccuracies in the parking statement. Particularly, it refers to.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Just had a request if you could bring your microphone a bit closer so we can hear you better.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Is that better?
Yeah. Yeah, and I'll give you a bit of extra time for your interruption. Yeah.
So there's a number of inaccuracies in that parking statement. Particularly, it includes 7 parking spaces in its count. They're actually on the highway in front of it, and it's been raised by the highways officer that shouldn't be included in the count. I think there's no mention of existing staff parking or provision for existing staff parking on the site, and there aren't. It's not a given number of for staff, and there's no mention of provision for staff parking. I think we've covered the 45-minute limit for restaurants and cafe, and then and then I think the last element of inaccuracy in that would be it identifies a number of spaces within 250 metres where cars can park, but it actually identifies a number of roads where there isn't room for cars to park on, and particularly along Windmill Lane and along the High Street where there's a busy route and a bus route as well, so it would obstruct buses. So really, I think, yeah, that being the main point, that the parking provision or the statement necessarily is inaccurate, and then hence the provision or the proposed reduction in parking is not appropriate. Hopefully that's within 3 minutes.
Okay, so that you're ending your commentary there?
Yes.
Yes, thank you very much, Councillor Rickson. So, members of the committee, do we have any questions for Councillor Rickson? Yes, Councillor Toomey Hawkins.
Thanks, Councillor Rickson. Can you tell us if there is current space for staff parking?
Well, that I can comment on. Thanks, Councillor Hawkins. I can't comment on that because it's undefined car parking space or car parking spaces of 44 parking spaces is unrestricted. So one would assume that there would be spaces available for staff within that.
Sorry. Sorry about that. It was just to understand a bit better why that is a point that you considered was important enough to raise. If there is no allocation for staff parking right now, should there be an allocation for staff parking going forward?
Well, for the operation of the businesses, the transport statement and the survey discusses cars staying for an average of 20 minutes or so. And so on the assumption that you'd be limited to 45 minutes, that's essentially saying there's no spaces for staff parking. So then that will be displaced, if that is the case, if staff are driving there, that will be displaced on surrounding streets. But that's not really, it doesn't appear to be taken into consideration or mentioned.
Thank you. Yes, Councillor Helen Leeming.
Thank you, Chair. So you mentioned that there are 7 spaces that are mentioned that are not part of the existing car park, and that they are on a bus route. Could you clarify that a bit further, please? Thank you.
Yeah, cool. So no, that's I'll clarify that because I've confused that slightly. So there's 7 spaces outside the front of the development, they're on the highway, and they are relied on within the calculations for the parking numbers. So you can.
So we're just trying to get it displayed.
So yeah, there you go. There's 7 spaces outside there, which are outside the development boundary, but they are included within the calculation for parking provision. It was noted by the highways officer again that there's an accuracy in their comments that they have been included and should be removed.
Thank you. I think Councillor Heather Williams wants to make a point on that point, if she may. So, Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chair. And just to clarify for everybody, if I can ask people to refer to page 32 of the report. It does say, I appreciate the numbers are included, so this is very sort of difficult to understand, but from our report, officers have discounted those, just to give some reassurance to the members, as is laid out in our report on page 32. I do have some questions, but I'll give way to Councillor Leeming. No? Okay.
Okay, thanks.
If I may, Chair?
Yeah.
So that might just help to give reassurance if you've got any comments on that, obviously. But my question is through the report. If you've got the report in front of you, page 13, paragraph 6.8, and page 15, paragraph 6.38.
Sorry, Councillor Williams, I don't have the report.
Oh, right, okay. So it's conservation and landscape officers that have put down objections. As a local member, you'll be more aware of the environment than ourselves. Just wondering if you have anything to comment on those areas as to the sort of street scene and the setting.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that's been picked up by Mr. Tremors and Mr. Jocelyn in terms of the size and the scale of it within the conservation area. I'll just refer back to the conservation area officers' comments.
Okay, thank you. Do you have any other questions? I had one question, if I may. Again, as somebody who lives locally, I just wonder if you could give us an idea of how the parish car park, which is within, I think, according to the report, 100 or 200 metres, how sort of how does that work? You know, how full is it during the day? Different times of the day. You know, is there capacity there that could be used?
Okay. Yeah. So I'd say on that, I'm fortunate enough to cycle, and I do live in the village, so I don't use that on a regular basis. I have visited the parish car park as part of trying to understand this application. At the time, it was close to full. I'd also say that parish car park is some distance away from these shops as well. You know, I couldn't necessarily measure it, but it's not the same convenience as to parking directly next to a cafe or a shop. So if with someone with low mobility, I don't think it would be a viable option.
Okay, thank you very much. Do you have any other questions?
Would you mind?
I think you're teetering on the brink of asking another question, Councillor Dr. Toomey Hawkins. Are you?
If I may, Chair.
Yes.
it's to do with the parking, the parish council parking that's behind the Methodist church. It is within walking distance. I have used it in the past because I do go to the Methodist church, not just on the Sundays sometimes, but on Saturdays. And I take your point about, it's more, and it's more convenient closer to the building, but are you saying that it's not walkable
No,
from the Tesco shop and those group of shops to that car park?
I think
It's on the same side of the road, and there's parking, there's pavement.
yeah. So I wouldn't say it's not walkable. I refer to it as if you had for someone with low mobility, and also with that in mind, if you're then carrying out your shopping as well, there's a distance to walk with the bags. Yeah. So in no way, and I mean, bear in mind, I qualified this in terms of, I'm fortunate enough to be able to use active travel to get there. So it's not my personal issue. So of course you can walk between the two.
Okay. If I can just make one final comment on that other car park, I suppose it may not be quite so convenient to drop in and get your shopping, but I would have thought it could be used by members of staff, and I think that was one of the other points that was raised in relation to the car park associated with the application. In that, so if there were capacity there, I guess that would mitigate on that point. But anyway, would you agree with that?
Yes, I mean, yes. I guess it could be, and like as I say, it was. The time I visited it, it was very well used. Yeah. That car park, and also I just clarify. I think there's a second point that from Councillor Lehman had asked about in terms of the bus route. What I was referring to there was in the I think it's in the further notes in the traffic survey. It identifies a series of roads within 250 metres walk, and a number of those roads are either residential roads, so directly outside, parking directly outside people's houses that may well already be full, and also routes along the bus route as well. So the point there was the justification that there's plenty of other parking spaces within 250 metres seems, in my view, a bit flawed in that respect.
Okay, thank you. Well, unless there are any further points of clarification, thank you, Councillor Rickson, for your help. And I think at this point, before we go into the debate, I'm going to propose a 15-minute sort of adjournment for sort of refresh ourselves. So if we could restart at 10 to 12, got that calculation correct? So we adjourn for the moment. Thank you. Are we good? Okay. Welcome back, everybody, to this sitting of the South Cambridgeshire Planning Committee, where we are looking at an application for the addition of 15 dwellings above existing commercial premises near School Hill rather, in Histon. I think that's correct. Yes, okay, thank you. We've heard from the officers, we've heard from local representatives and Councillor Rickson, the local member. We've had a chance to seek clarification from those people. So now it's time to move on to the debate section. So I think, first of all, I know Councillor Leeming, you had some points as an introduction to that.
Thank you, Chair. I have two questions, please. The first one is, what modelling has been done about the servicing of Tesco with delivery vehicles? I listened carefully to Councillor Jocelyn's comments about his concerns about large lorries reversing in and out of this space. And I am concerned about the safety of pedestrians in the area, particularly given that it's next to a shop and a library. There'll be a number of people walking around this area, and I want to ensure that they're safe. So I wanted to understand what modelling have been done in regards to these delivery vehicles. That was my first question. My second question is to do with this 45 minutes on the parking time. Where has that actually come from? Who has specified that 45 minutes is an adequate amount of time? Sort of considering the wider use in the area, there's a library and a restaurant, people who are visiting both of those premises would probably wish to spend longer than 45 minutes there. Are we restricted to 45 minutes, or is this parking restriction something that we have the scope to comment on? If it was extended for, say, 2 hours, this would remove the issue about damaging the trade in the restaurant. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we have some commentary on that, Phoebe?
Yes, so the vehicle servicing has been set out within paragraph or section 4.4 and appendix D of the transport assessment, and in 7.4 of the supplementary transport assessment. Both of these documents have been reviewed by the local highways authority, and they have raised no concerns with either of those assessment. I don't know exactly what modelling that they've based it off, but the highways authority have reviewed these documents, and servicing has been included in both of these documents from it. Additionally, I'm just going to bring up onto the screen for you. This document has been submitted, which shows the tracking documents of tracking of different and swept path analysis of different vehicles on the site, and these again have been reviewed by the the local highways authority, who have raised no concerns with the swept path analysis information that has been carried out. So where I don't know which modelling that they've used, the local highways authority are satisfied with the information that has been set out within the swept path analysis document, and also the transport assessment and the supplementary transport assessment provided. In regards to the 45-minute parking time, this was set out by the applicants within the transport assessment and is being conditioned by us. It isn't necessarily, it is something that could be reviewed and come back to. If 45 minutes is not sufficient, then it's something that could be looked at to be increased. The supplementary, the transport assessment sets out a maximum 45 minutes on any day between 6:30 and 6 p.m. And then thereafter, initially, a charge of £1 per hour will be applied. So there is the ability to stay longer if required. But this is something that could be, if through future monitoring of the site is not found to be, or it's found to be insufficient, then this could be amended as part of, they could apply to redischarge condition and improve the, or increase the time management.
Thank you.
Back to the delivery vehicle, Councillor Jocelyn indicated that it may not, that the size of the lorry that would be delivering to the supermarket may not have been clear in this transport assessment, and that there may have been assumptions used about the sorts of vehicles that were turning up to deliver to the supermarket. I'm not sure how much further we can pursue this, but it does remain a concern.
The swept path analysis diagram that I showed up set two different vehicle sizes up and shows it for two different vehicle sizes, one which is a 10.14 metre and another vehicle which is a 7.5 tonne panel vehicle, and both of those have been shown on the plan, so they do set out the size of the vehicles, and the Highways Authority have reviewed that information. Thank you.
Is that, do you have any? Yes, Councillor Heather Williams.
Just to say, I think it would be really helpful as well, just to clarify, we've had lots of numbers put around about the parking, but what we're looking at, because the fallback position, is the net loss between the 2019, if that was to be built out, as that can be, and the current, and that is, for clarity, not including the areas outside the red line as well in our calculations. So I believe that the net loss is 5, but we've had lots of different numbers thrown around through the meeting. So I think some clarity on that would be really helpful. Chair, before we start the debate.
Yes.
Sorry, it's in here. I've just got to find the right paragraph. Just give me 1 second.
I'm sure it is in here as 5.
It's a reduction of 6 spaces on the extent emission.
That was worthwhile clarifying then, thank you.
Okay. Any other contributions from our members, or shall I will just... I will... Are you going to... Yes, thank you. Councillor Dr. Chumi Hawkins.
Happy to open.
Sorry.
First of all, I just want to say thank you to the officers for the report, and also for those who've turned up to actually, tell us their views about this proposal. I understand that there's concerns, and as somebody who lives in a village myself, I appreciate that, we want to keep the village character as much as we can. But at the same time, I think we need to understand that we will need to grow, and we are growing. The question is how we do that growth. And this is where the policies come in. I was quite intrigued by the list of neighborhood plan policies that was highlighted. And if I may, I'll just sort of point my way through those. Of course, a lot of hard work went into the neighborhood plan, and when we adopted it, I think I'm at the point that we appreciate it. It's very helpful that we have the indication from the community as to how they want to see the place grow. Now, in terms of HMO1, high quality design, I think design is one of those things where we will probably all have to agree to disagree. Beauty, they say, is in the eye of the beholder. But the idea is that the developments should contribute positively. I mean, from what I've seen of the design, it is new, it is different to, sort of the, what is there now, but does it contribute positively? I would say it does, but then, it's a balance. Now, the heritage asset is something that everyone is very concerned about, and we appreciate that. Yes, there is harm. I guess again, it's a balance of how significant is this harm. I wish the conservation officer could explain what it means that it's a significant, less than substantial harm. I found that very confusing, to be honest. And agreed that there is harm. The question is it so harmful that the benefit does not outweigh, or the harm outweighs the benefit? And I think with developments, there's always going to be harm somewhere, and that is where we come in. The question is, how do we balance the harm and the benefits? I'll probably come to that further down the line. In terms of the size and the scale, now this is what Councillor Justin mentioned was a concern, the scale of what is going to be there. Bear in mind, what we're looking at now is with reference to what was previously consented. So yes, there is a difference. We're looking at previously consented is 1 story above, now we're saying it's 2 stories above. And that comes to, I think we had the figure about 2.1 meters taller than what was previously consented. The question is that significant enough? To cause us to go, we don't want this, but it's new housing. And it's housing that, again, is 1 and 2 bedrooms, which the neighborhood plan supports. And frankly, anywhere, we all know, finding somewhere to live, in South Cambs can be difficult sometimes. Histon is one of our more, what's the word I'm looking for, sustainable villages in terms of transport and size and all that. And I'm there at least once a month. I know that. So I also know, in terms of the parking, which I will come to later on. But again, this is probably where we need to balance, is that scale in that location too much, or does the benefit outweigh what we consider is the harm that going the 2nd floor is going to bring? But bearing in mind also that what we have now is step back more than the fallback of 2019. So again, perhaps that's a positive, something else that we need to balance. Parking. As I've said before, I have used the parking in Histon, both next to Tesco, because I've gone and bought stuff there, but also I have parked in the parish car park behind the Methodist Church, and have walked it. So it is possible to walk it, and I think it is close enough. But I also note there was one of your neighborhood policies that talked about coordinating parking with adjacent sites through joint working. I don't know if that was done in this case. I'm specifically referring to policy HIM6, which says improve the organization of car parking and connect parking spaces across adjacent sites through joint working with neighboring property owners. So, there was the intention of using adjacent sites for parking. So in that respect, I would say that it is positive that there is the parish car parking space available for potential users. I had asked about HM07, supporting the use of the creation of 1 and 2 bedroom flats, which should be affordable, but also recognizing the proximity of Brook House, the Gables, again, which are the heritage assets. So again, the fact that actually the proposal went through our design review panel, and then was revised based on the feedback from that, shows that there was the intention to make sure that the design was something that could go with the area that it's proposed for. I'm not sure I quite understood why it's against HIM 12, because that's just about the green space. But it is, the green space is still available for use. Now, in my view, there's the issue of, as I said before, harm and benefits. So what are the benefits of this proposal? It's providing affordable housing. A lot of us are, and I say this, yeah, I've got a silver mane. I'm not going to be here for much longer. Who knows? But those coming behind us need somewhere to live. We want somewhere to live. We have families growing. I've got 2 kids. They're not going to live with me forever. But they need to be able to go find somewhere to live. And I'm sure there's lots of families, in that respect. And it's a good thing to be able to do this or provide something like this in a sustainable village location, which is what this is. So at this point in time, I'm looking at the fact that the benefit of this proposal, in my view, outweighs the harm that we think is being caused, to the heritage assets. But I'll leave others to make their comments so I don't hog the floor. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Dr. Toomey Hawkins. Who would like to go next in terms of?
I've got a summary, Chair. If Councillor Leaming's ready, I don't mind going after. Yeah, okay.
Okay, so Councillor Heather Williams.
Thank you, Chair, and I hope you'll bear with me while I try and go through the different points I've heard raised today, some of which I covered earlier. So when it comes to things like the metering, I do feel that we've got a condition 18, that would help cover that. We've also had the use of brownfield land raised, of which I think, this is what we would classify as a brownfield site. The parking is a huge issue that's been debated and representations made throughout the process. But we do have to bear in mind the fallback position as well. We're not dealing with status quo versus, this new proposal. So I think the loss of 6 spaces is something that's naturally going to cause concern. We've had a lot of debate around the 45 minutes, but I do feel condition 21, if this was approved, does allow for that flexibility, for that monitoring approach, and actually that it might, that's not set in stone, it might change, it might evolve, and that officers have conditions to cover that. Light is something that has been raised through the questions, and I think that's something we don't have a condition on at the moment, but if it were to be approved, we very much should. And I'd ask officers to help in propose sort of some text that we can have displayed and considered in relation to that. We've heard about the lorries reversing, and I can understand the concerns that have been raised. As I said earlier, any breach of any other permissions do need reporting, and if this was to be approved, then full compliance with any conditions is expected and I'm sure will be enforced. But we don't have an objection from the Highways Authority, and so to refuse without a statutory objection on that ground would not be something that's really feasible for us to do. Councillor Hawkins raises about Histon being a more sustainable village in South Cambs, and I completely agree. There is a post office in Histon, sounds like a small thing. I don't have one in my entire ward, which has 11 villages in it. Or we might have one still in Hatley, maybe right on the edge. So some of our areas literally have nothing. So Histon is very lucky, and actually the growth can help sustain those local facilities. Affordable housing, have complete sympathy. The definition is very much a legal and technical definition of affordable housing and not the reality for our residents here. In other areas of the country, it does mean affordable housing, but the cost of living in South Cambridgeshire is something that many people struggle with, and leads to a lot of the issues, as Councillor Hawkins raised, or people like myself that are multi-generational living with 3 generations in the same home. But for the purposes of planning, we need to stay within our legal definition of affordable housing. I do feel that a housing officer, thank you to Julie Fletcher for that clarification. And the local plan, was wrote some years ago, and the world has evolved since then. When it comes to the size, design and scale, we do have objections, obviously, referencing pages 13 from conservation and page 15 from the landscape. It does ask for hard and soft landscaping requests for conditions, and I believe they are covered, and I've seen those through the report. So I find this a really interesting site, particularly when we were on site, because it is an increase of 2.1 metres, which, when you're sort of looking at the reality of that doesn't have an impact so much on the front, but on the rear, sorry, but it would to the front, because on the rear things sort of slope away. I actually found that the height of sort of 2.5 stories was consistent with the properties to the rear, and the sort of, I assume they're apartments if you're looking out the rear to the right, and then on the left, which is a building which I believe is listed via the local plan of Histon and Impington. So those buildings were higher than those to the front of the proposed development. So it's that balance between the Histon and Impington local plan listed building, and then what I affectionately call the pink house at the front. When it came to the design, I felt that actually with, if we could have actually the front view displayed, I felt there had been attempts to kind of mirror that pink building in the way that the sort of pictures and what have you came out, much more than the 2019 proposal, which I would describe as a block. So for me, it felt like there was a significant improvement from the 2019. And I say that because, as I said earlier, we are looking between the fallback position and this. So I don't think we have a picture of the listed building that's opposite, but it's similar in the sort of triangular apex style and front faced as well. I do feel that the cladding is inconsistent with the rest of the street scene as I saw. I couldn't see, for as far as I was looking, there might be something around a corner that cladding had been used anywhere else, and that sort of almost more rural effect of like a barn style. So that's something that I'm not best pleased with. But as Councillor Hawkins said, that can be very subjective. What one person sees is positive, can be a negative. For me, I don't think that is the right materials in respect to the heritage, the pink house, the listed building. But we do have to balance that with the need for affordable housing. And so as I sit here now, we have the loss of the 6 spaces, and we have, in my view, the materials on the front of the building versus the addition of actually the 1 and 2 bed units, which we really struggle quite often to actually get applications for. And then I'm also looking at the block of the previous application. So while I don't like the materials, I do think that this design is an improvement on the fallback position, very much so. The parking, we are already under provision on the site. I believe there are places for electric bikes as well. Officers are nodding it, so I've not gone completely rogue there. I completely understand the issues with parking, but the loss of 6 spaces, when it comes to harm, we have to identify harm, whether that creates so much harm to go against the officer recommendation. At the moment, I don't feel it's quite there, because we do have the condition in place, and some actually, the fact there's no lines at the moment in that car park either, some sort of management plan for that site, I think, would potentially improve it. But it does need monitoring, which I think the condition can achieve. Light, however, is something that does need, if we are minded to approve, does need to be considered in length. I hope, Chair, that fairly reflects the comments that have been made and my views. I will listen to the rest of the debate, but that's where I'm at present, Chair.
Yes, thank you, Vice Chair Heather Williams. I think that was a very useful summary of what we've heard so far. Councillor Helen Neeming, would you like to?
Thank you, Chair. For me, this is a tricky one. I accept Councillor Williams' comments that there will be 6 fewer spaces in the car park, but in addition to this, there will be 6 additional properties on top of the loss of 6 spaces. So I think it's a slightly bigger. The harm is slightly bigger than just 6 fewer spaces. I am acutely aware of the demand for new housing, particularly 1 and 2 bedroom properties. Looking at the design of the building, I actually prefer this visual than the fallback position. I think it because it's set back, it's less aggressive, it's less blocky, and it feels more in keeping with the area. I have a number of concerns, however. One is about these delivery vehicles. I feel that legally I am forced to place reliance on the Highways report, which has stated that this has been modelled and that this is safe. That this is the evidence that we've been given, and this is what I have to base the decision on. I'm not sure where else we can go with that, but if a local councillor is expressing concerns about that, I would like that to be noted. I don't know where else we can take this, because I have to place reliance on the expert evidence that I've been given. In terms of the parking times, I am concerned that 45 minutes isn't a realistic amount of time for a number of the existing businesses that are on the site, and I would like us to pursue the possibility of extending that and looking at what flexibility there is around this 45-minute parking restriction, which I fear could damage particularly the local restaurant, but might cause difficulty for people in visiting the library. Just 45 minutes is fine if you're going into a shop, but it's not if you're going out for a meal. And I hope we'll be able to have some flexibility with that. I also noted that in the report, it's in paragraph 9.120, talks about there being 2 disabled spaces being retained for the retail units. Some of the understanding of the adequacy of the local parking is that there is a fallback position of this car park behind the Methodist Church. What modelling, I would like to understand more really about what modelling has been done to understand the sense and the adequacy of 2 disabled spaces near the car park, near the existing an existing car park, because it is disabled people who would need to be close to the existing premises, as opposed to more able-bodied people who would be able to walk from further away. I'd like to understand what modelling had been done around these two disabled spaces, and that would give me some comfort over the mitigation of another car park which is in walking distance. I'm conscious that we have the fallback position of the old planning consent, which contains many of the issues that we're raising now. So we're actually comparing between the existing consent and what we have before us, and whether that makes things better or not. And whether there's a significant material difference in terms of the harm that's done between the two applications. And it's a difficult one in the balance. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Heather Williams.
Thank you, Chair. And just to echo Councillor Leaming's frustration when it comes to highways is something, Councillor Hawkins, I think's reaction sums it up. We are regularly in that position, and it is a complete frustration of committee, and I think we should endorse Councillor Leaming's comments on that as an issue that we have on a month by month basis. In relation to the parking, just one thing that I think we should be aware of on the 45 minutes is at the end of the day, that could be implemented without any issues currently, whereas an application, if this was granted today, and we don't know where that's going to be yet, but if it was, then the council would actually, through condition 21, have some form of control and oversight of that management, which may then support and assist with the issues that are being raised. Whereas, as it stands today, the owners of the land could implement this 45-minute rule with no issues at all. So that wouldn't really come into our planning remit. But sometimes, like you say, a little bit of harm can do some good in other areas. I don't know if officers wish to clarify anything else on that, Chair. That's just cost the Chair £10 for the Chairman's charity for his phone going off in the chamber. There you go. We'll make sure Councillor Fane is aware. Councillor Harvey. Does officers have any wish to add to that? Yeah, of course. Well,
yes, of course. Thank you. Sorry.
Thank you, Chair. It's just to say I know there's been a lot of emphasis on this 45 minutes, but that is for free. You can still park there. It's just going to cost you £1 per hour after that. Mm-hmm. So, is there an issue?
Thank you. Would you like to?
I think that sort of leads to my issue about the parking management can help give us oversight and might be able to give that flexibility, but for the purposes of the application, it's not something that we can apply significant weight to.
Okay. Thank you. Any other comments before I make my own? Okay. Thank you. Well, I'm just going to reflect back on Councillor Heather Williams, just on the aesthetics, and you're right, it is a subjective thing. I actually do, I think the sort of facial treatments for sorry, I think I really meant that, the treatments for the walls of the scheme above are, I felt looking at the visualization there, sort of minimises what we've got. I do like as I said before, the encouragement of a sort of cafe area at the front of the existing development, and I think the recent renovation of that has created a very attractive space, but I think that the setting back of the development above and the way that it's kind of mitigated by the the gabling means that the disruption to that part of the village, I think, is minimised. And like the other members, I think if you compare it with the allowed application where we were going to have a development on top of the Tesco's, I would say that aesthetically it's more pleasing, and that's because the massing of it is kind of controlled and it's set back from the road. So I do like that. A lot of debates have been around about the parking issues, but I think, in my view, the data there that I flagged earlier in the questions to officers, I mean, if it really is the case, which we understand it is, that for people who live in flats in Histon, 60% of them don't have cars. In some ways, you could argue that that would imply that the parking is adequate, even though it's been one of the things raised the most, at least for the residential part of the parking allocation. And, referring back to what Councillor Hawkins said, I mean, this Histon is one of our most sustainable locations. It's near the busway. It's got good connections to, the science park area, for example, provides a lot of employment. And I could see that because Histon has a sort of critical mass, it's got restaurants, it's got shops, it's got a post office, etc. It would be quite possible to live in a very sustainable way where, you don't really need a bike, and you can travel to work and back. So I can believe that statistic would be correct. And in a sort of national perspective, we do need housing. We need it for our children, as Councillor Hawkins has said. So, and I think maybe the sort of the presence of the parish council car park within a proximity, I think. I can imagine, so for the employees, maybe you could argue that sort of undermines the parking provision, but if I were Tesco's, I think I would be thinking more about my customers than my employees. A lot of the employees would be local anyway, I'm guessing in this case, but I'm sure the employees could be encouraged to make space for the customers who really need it. And so I think on balance, my view is that, and as Councillor Dr. Toomey Hawkins said, it is this question of weighing the harm against the benefit. And I think it's a really difficult one in this case, but I think, in view of the sustainable location and the need for these smaller units, particularly 1 and 2 bedrooms, in my view, the balance is coming down more in favour of the benefits outweighing the harms, and that's my view. But I don't know if we had any further contributions. Yes, Councillor Heather Williams.
Thank you, Chair. It's just in relation to I did suggest that we had extra conditions attached. So just wondering if now is a time to raise those. One was in relation to light, but I don't know if other members have suggested conditions in the event that it is approved.
Of course. Councillor Hawkins, I think you had yours slightly first, so would you?
Thank you. If we were minded to approve this, I think in addition to the lighting, because lighting tends to be quite something that we're having issues with these days, external lighting needs to be, conditioned in a way that, it's not blaring out, sort of like out that way, but maybe downlighters, because we currently have a couple of places where it's an issue. Also, access to the post boxes for the flats. I don't know if there's a lobby. If there isn't, then where are those going to go, obviously? And in terms of the 2019 application as the fallback, I know it's been said that, if this is granted permission, then that one can't be built out. Could we have something that actually says that as a condition? Or informative? Nothing? So I'm just thinking they could come back and just build a bit of it and leave the rest.
Well, I don't know.
Can we have a legal?
Yes.
Chair, through you. No, they can only build what they've got permission for. So if they were to try and implement a permission that didn't exist, well, we'd be able to deal with that.
I think I'm more concerned about the partial implementation. Because as it stated, that particular application provides for a building on top of the Tesco section. Am I right, or am I getting this wrong? So the bit over the Tesco section,
Yes.
right, could potentially still be built out, couldn't it? No?
Chair, I'm going to pass over to the planning officer, but my understanding is not if this one is implemented, no, but let the planning officer answer that.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think if we were in that situation and have ever tried to build out over the top of Tesco's, they would be in breach of the approved plans from that planning consent, because you'd have two overlapping permissions. I was actually going to ask our legal officer if that could be worded into the 106 agreement in some way, because I think we have had similar situations before where we have had overlapping permissions, and then through the 106 agreement as part of this application, that would knock that on the head. That was going to be my question to legal, but I'm sure there is a mechanism. I don't think we can do it by planning condition, but I think potentially as part of the legal agreement.
No, I could have a look at the wording of a 106, but off the top of my head, I can't think of how we would word that. But I could certainly have a look. The officers mentioned we've done it previously. I've never done that, but that's not to say it can't be done. I'm slightly uncomfortable with it as, an obligation within a 106. But I'm happy to talk to the officer. What I'd like to do to answer it properly is to take an adjournment and speak to the officer so that I can definitively answer that question before we go to a vote.
Okay. Shall we adjourn now for 10 minutes? Okay, we're adjourned for 10 minutes. Thank you. Okay, thank you. Welcome back. Briefly, I'm going to propose that we take a lunch break now until 1:30. So I'd like to propose that. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Hedwin. Thank you. So I don't think I need to say any more. So we're now adjourned for lunch until 1:30. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. Welcome back to the, having broken for lunch, South Cambridgeshire Planning Committee, where we are dealing with an application to build 15 residential units above an existing commercial property in Histon. We've had a description from the case officer of the scheme. We've had representations from parish council, local member and interested parties, and we've also had a debate amongst the members of the committee. And it's now time to address some technical issues that arose during the debate session. We have got 3 items we'd like to bring into the scope of what's being either agreed or not agreed. And first off is the question over the status of the existing planning application for accommodation over the Tesco's shop, and what the status of that would be were the current application to be built out. And I think the committee are concerned to make that very clear what the situation would be. And so I think the proposal is that the 106 agreement will now ask for a sort of retraction of the agreement that the remaining part of sorry?
It's an obligation.
It's an obligation, okay.
15 units.
Oh, obligation, right, okay, so
Do you want me to explain that, Chair?
yes, if I could hand over to Vanessa to describe that.
So through you, Chair. So members, what will happen is I will take responsibility for drafting this 106, and within that 106 will be an obligation from the owner, a covenant not to build over, effectively, the area above Tesco's. So we'll have a hatched plan. So I undertake, I covenant not to build over the area hatched, green, blue, whatever we decide to do, on plan XYZ. So if they did, they'd be in breach of the 106. That's the best way of dealing with this one.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So has that covered off item number 1? I think it has. So item number 2, members were concerned that there should be a condition around the lighting arrangements, and I think officers have prepared a new condition for us to review. I don't know if we can have that on the screen now.
Thank you, Chair. Phoebe's just explaining this on screen. If we could zoom in a little bit on the top condition. This is effectively our standard condition for ecology lighting scheme, a lighting design strategy for biodiversity, which will require the developer to identify key areas of sensitivity and how any external lighting would be arranged, so to fully conserve and enhance ecological interests. So this is a standard condition we felt was appropriate, subject to your agreement.
Okay.
I'm happy to propose that, Chair.
Thank you.
Councillor Hawkins.
Do we have a seconder?
Multiple.
Okay. Councillor Dr. Toomey Hawkins, thank you very much.
Unless that was that clarification.
Oh, was there a second? Okay.
I got a seconder.
I think that was
So it's
seconded by
Proposed
yes.
by
Yeah.
myself, seconded.
Yeah. Okay, so can we,
Take it by affirmation.
I think we probably can, yeah, can we take that by affirmation? Or would we?
Agreed.
Is that okay to do that? Yes, okay, agreed.
Now we have
so-
the informative,
Yes.
informative on lorries.
Yes, okay.
Point
So-
of clarification, do we need to do the same thing to vote on the section 106?
No.
Okay, so now we have the informative
On lorries.
around,
I guess that's that all lorries will enter and leave in Falkirk.
Sorry, through you, Chair, we hadn't written this one down, but there was some concern about the lorry movement, which is to serve the Tesco site, which is in blue, so it's not technically part of the application, but I think members wanted informative to just simply say that the applicant is advised that all lorries and delivery vehicles serving Tesco should enter and exit the site in forward gear. We can't have that as a condition, it's not part of this application, but we can have it as an informative so those concerns are made known.
Yeah.
Happy to. Councillor Lehman, do you want to propose?
Okay, Councillor Lehman.
Thank you. I would like to propose words along that line. Thank you.
Okay, so
Chair, if I can.
if I could, yeah, Councillor Lehman, would you like to propose that informative and then?
Thank you. Yes, I would like to propose an informative that all delivery vehicles enter and leave the site in front gear. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And a seconder? Councillor Williams.
Yes, and I've got the writing. I'll have a second. The writing in front of me is all lorries will enter and leave in forward gear.
Okay. Can we again take that by affirmation?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Councillor Lehman has a...
And yes, okay. And now, Councillor Lehman, I think you wanted to say something on the issue of parking.
Thank you. So I have a couple of comments on parking. We've spoken at length about parking in the wider area, and we've been made aware that there's additional community parking in the car park behind the Methodist Chapel. For people who are able to walk and walk that sort of distance, I think that does mitigate this to some extent. However, looking through the document, there are 2 disabled spaces allocated in the site, and I want to be clear that that is adequate for provision of people turning up to the library and to the shop, because those people are the people who could potentially not walk the distance from an alternative site.
Yes, and how would we intend to address that? Could we have your input, Phoebe?
So there are no current disabled spaces laid out on the site. There is a document from the Department for Transport for Inclusive Mobility, a guide to best practice on access to pedestrian and transport infrastructure, which sets out that for car parks associated with shopping areas, leisure or recreational facilities, 6% of the total capacity for visiting disabled motorists should be, laid out. And there are 2 spaces which are shown on the proposed site plan, which meets that 6% requirement.
Okay, I didn't quite follow that. You said that there wasn't a provision, but so is there going to be a provision or not? I'm sorry, I didn't quite understand.
There isn't any existing provision for disabled spaces on the site.
Yes.
There are 2 spaces shown for the commercial facilities on the proposed site plan, which has been set out, and that meets the 6% requirement.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Councillor Heather Williams.
Thank you, Chair. I don't believe we've got anybody else that wants any clarification, so I was going to put my point for the debate before the vote, if that's okay with you.
Yes.
I said earlier that I would listen to colleagues, and I have to say I don't think that any development on this site potentially would be able to come to a point where there was no harm given its proximity to the heritage site and with everything else and the current restrictions on parking. But it is a balance, and I think this application does actually give opportunity to improve from the fallback position from an aesthetical point of view on the front rather than, and it is set back as opposed to the Tesco development. And in relation to the car parking, which I think is probably the biggest crux of things for residents and for ourselves today, at the moment, restrictions could be put on that car parking at any moment without any consideration for the rest of or what the council thinks or local residents think. Whereas the condition here, condition 21, does allow for that conversation the council will be involved in that, and when the condition is seek to be discharged, the residents will have another opportunity to make representations if they so wish through that process. So I think the parking situation is not a finite settled thing for today. I think that conversation will carry on, and I encourage everybody to take part in that process when it comes through, if approved today. We do need housing units. It does feel like a unique opportunity in a sustainable village, and we do need more affordable provision. And I appreciate what was said about the 15 years and everything else, but something is better than nothing. And if we go to the fallback position, which could be built, which would still lead to the loss of car parking spaces and everything else, we would have no affordable units if the fallback position comes in place. What I will say though, because we've heard concerns actually about the existing management, I think today, more than anything else. These conditions are not optional. These conditions are expected to be, and informatives, are expected to be adhered to. And if any residents thought that this was not the case, then they should raise compliance on this or any other applications, previous consents given. It is not an easy decision today, as others have said, and I think there is an obligation on us to really take that into consideration and balance it. And sometimes we are restrained or have things like statutory consultation responses that aren't supportive to perhaps how our heart would like to vote. But I think using our heads on that balance, I am minded that I will be supporting the application as it seeks to regularise the current situation, hopefully will improve that management, is an improvement on the fallback position. I think if there wasn't the fallback position, then today would be a very different conversation. But we're not comparing existing situation to this proposal. But I hope that the applicant has heard the residents' concerns today and will take those on board as the construction and everything else that progresses, if it is minded. And as I say, we have taken great care on conditions today because it matters, and we expect them to be enforced if necessary, but hopefully complied with.
Thank you. Would other members like to sum up their position? Or yes, Councillor Dr. Toomey Hawkins.
Councillor Leaming was first.
Oh, sorry.
I already have Helen down.
Oh yeah, Councillor Leaming in that case. I'm sorry.
You sure? I wrote you a list, Chair.
We did.
Thank you, Chair. This is a really difficult one for me because I appreciate the concerns of local residents that many have turned up to speak today and have written and have engaged their local members both at parish level and at district level to make their thoughts known. As Councillor Williams said, where this is a decision between the site as it is literally now and this proposal, it would be a very different decision. But there is a fallback position in place, which was the previous planning consent, and I think this is better than that. I think the visual impact of this scheme is an improvement on the one-storey development, and I think strangely the fact that this proposal includes discussions of parking actually enables the community and relevant bodies to have some say in what actually happens with this car park, which wasn't there before. My biggest concern was the comments about the delivery vehicles and the safety of pedestrians accessing the site, and I hope that the informative that we have put into this application gives local people some comfort that we have listened to this and that we will do our best to ensure that the site remains safe. however, ultimately, this is an opportunity for 15 much needed properties in the centre of a very lovely village, which has very high house prices, and it isn't properties of sort of 1 and 2 bedroom size are not always that easy to come by. So thinking about the future residents and the housing need locally in the balance of this, I will vote to approve. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Leeming. Councillor Dr. Toomey Hawkins, would you like to?
Thank you, Chair. Not much more I can add to that. I think the 3 key issues we've talked about, and I think have addressed scale and massing. I think I like Councillor Heather Williams' comparison with the pink house opposite, which is the Gables. You can see that, this one kind of, has similarity to that. Yes, we agree there is harm to conservation area, but then the question is, does the benefit of having 15 1 and 2 bedroom dwellings, much needed, outweigh that harm? Parking provision, not much more I can say to that one. I think having nearby parking spaces is, for me, a mitigation to the harm that not having a full number presents. So when all is said and done, I will be supporting this application for the benefit that it provides. In my view, outweighs the harm that has been identified. Unless the Chair has anything else to say, I'd like to move the motion that we actually go to a vote.
Yes, so, well, I would just like to add my own thing. I agree with everything that other members have said, except I think it would be a shame if, I think we would have had a different debate if it hadn't been for the existing planning application. I don't think that should mean that this application doesn't have merit in its own right. And I think, as you said, it's a difficult one, but I view that in the balance, the benefit outweighs the harm. But, I agree it's quite a close one, but I would be supporting this application. And now I think we need to have the officer recommendation and then propose a vote on that to either accept or reject the officer application.
Thank you, Chair. So the recommendation is as set out on page 44 of the report in paragraph 10. That is to approve the application subject to the planning conditions as set out in the report. That would include an update to condition 18 for water efficiency. Officers have said at the beginning of the presentation to tweak the wording to a compliance condition in line with the technical documents submitted, which is actually an improvement on the 110 position. The addition of the ecology lighting condition, which was displayed on screen earlier, and the informative in regards to service lorries entering and exiting in a forward gear, and also the satisfactory completion of a Section 106 agreement with those tweaks that Vanessa Blaine mentioned earlier as well.
So, thank you. Could I have a proposer to, thank you, Councillor Toomey Hawkins, and a seconder to vote on? Yeah, so seconded proposal to accept the officer recommendation from Councillor Heather Williams. Shall we now go to a vote?
We're doing electronic or we're doing electronic?
Okay.
Yes, this one. I think that number has a mind of its own.
That is unanimous, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. So,
Aaron's mic's not on, to clarify that.
unanimous.
Just to clarify the result, for anyone who can't see it, and to formalise that, the application and the officer recommendation has been voted on by the committee, and I think that was a unanimous result in favour of accepting the officer recommendation along with the informative and condition added, and in accordance with officer recommendations. Okay, just to get the wording right, is approved in accordance with officer recommendations. With conditions. And of course, including the section 106 arrangements as described by Vanessa Blaine earlier.
That's it.
Okay, well, I think that brings this session to a close, and thank you for everyone for including members of the public and other speakers, a very in-depth session, and that draws it to a close. Thank you very much.